Welcome to Type Tune Tint. I'm Tom Kranz. Lake Superior in November. Harsh, unforgiving, deadly. Of the 6,000 shipwrecks recorded on the Great Lakes, perhaps none was as unusual or as unpublicized as the wreck of the city of Bangor. What made it so unusual? Its cargo of 220 brand new 1926 Chryslers, destined for car dealers in Minnesota. They never made it. The city of Bangor crashed into a reef in horrific winter weather, its crew and cargo stuck on a ship that wasn't going anywhere. Ice and snow fell relentlessly, creating an 8-inch frozen crust over everything. But somehow all were rescued, crew and cars, in an epic story of human achievement told by my guest today, Larry Jorgensen, a lifelong journalist and history buff, in his new book, Shipwrecked and Rescued. And I'm joined right now by Larry Jorgensen. Larry sent me a copy, which I really appreciated, a signed copy of the new book we're talking about today called Shipwrecked and Rescued, subtitled Cars and Crew. So, when I first looked at it, it's a beautiful cover. It shows an iced over ship and black and white photograph of vintage cars from the 20s. And I said, gosh, what could this possibly be about? People, this is a great book. If you have any interest at all in just a great story that has to do with shipwrecks, it's not even just about shipwrecks. It's really more about human beings accomplishing what seems to be an impossible task against all odds. And I'll let Larry talk more about that. Larry, first of all, thanks very much. You're joining us from the wilds of Wisconsin today, correct?
That's correct. Northern Wisconsin today, upper Michigan, return to the scene of the wreck next week.
Right. And you have a history of being from that part of the country, right? Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota. Isn't that where you kind of honed your skills as a journalist, correct?
Right. I started out in Wisconsin. In fact, the town I'm at right now, Eagle River, was a high school student working for the local weekly newspaper. And we're talking the days of hot lead and linotypes, okay? From there to Milwaukee to a newspaper publishing company in Milwaukee, on to radio, TV, and then back to Wisconsin for a TV segment. Ended up being the news director at the NBC station in Green Bay.
Folks, I'm just going to give you basically the thumbnail here. Imagine a massive ship in the Great Lakes, Lake Superior, basically almost sinking, but not quite, running aground with a cargo of over 200 brand new cars. And this book that Larry researched painstakingly with incredible details. I don't know where the hell you found out all this stuff, and maybe I don't want to know, but great details about the people, the cars, how they not only they finally made it to this shipwreck, which happened in the middle of winter at a time when there is no internet, no cell phones, no GPS, none of that stuff. They rescued the cars. First, they rescued the crew that had to basically get off this ship in sub-zero temperatures and trudge through snowdrifts and ice until they finally found a safe harbor. And then they rescued, the outside company rescued the cars and whatnot. Larry, first of all, tell me how you found out about this ship, which was called the City of Bangor, and what interested you in this story?
Well, it's amazing because of all the shipwrecks, and there have been 6,000 on the Great Lakes.
That's amazing. That's the first thing that shocked me. That's like the first sentence of your book. And I said, 6,000? Where the hell are all those ships?
Well, and those are the recorded ones. Who knows what else, So, but this is the only one truly like this where the cars were rescued. There are a lot of cars on the bottom of the Great Lakes, okay? Because in those days, they hauling cars by ship was a pretty convenient way to do it. You didn't have the good highways you have now. How did I find this story? If you look at the map of all the shipwrecks, it's not on there. I've never heard the story before, and I've been to Upper Peninsula many, many times. I like it as a retreat. I picked up a little booklet, and it was about the Upper Peninsula and Shipwreck. So there's about a page and a half in there with a couple pictures of this rescue of basically of the cars. And I thought, wait a minute. As much as I've been up here, I've never heard of this. And the people in the town, oh yeah, it happened, and isn't that neat? Well, I was not satisfied with that. As an old news dog, there has to be more to the story. And I started researching. I really became addicted to the story.
Well, I can see why. It's amazing. I mean, once you find out that, once you get hooked on it, you want to know how it ends, and it took years and years for it to end. And in some ways it really hasn't, but so you figured it out, and you like history, that you prove that with your books about the Coke Trail, and you have a feel for it, and it seems like this is part of kind of where you came from. So I'm guessing all that kind of came together and you decided to dive in, correct?
I did, and fortunately, I was able to find a lot of people that would help me, like the granddaughter of the family that saved the crew, and the historian, the maritime historian at the museum at the Eagle Harbor Lighthouse. He'd been onto this thing for years and had dug up some information and had some photos and so forth. Now, the book, Tom, is loaded, as you probably have seen, with some great photos. And one of the reasons those photos are there, the captain of the rescue boat that rescued the crew was a photo nut.
Yeah, thank God for that, because the photographs are amazing.
They are, absolutely.
I mean, they make the story. You see all the photos of the ships iced over. I'm sorry, the cars on the ship before they had to hack them out, and then you see these long caravan of this 200-old 1926 model Chryslers on this icy. I mean, it's unworldly. You've never seen anything like it. It's just amazing.
Well, and the shot, you finally get them all to Copper Harbor, population 24 or whatever, and here's 200 and some Chryslers lined up in this field in Copper Harbor. I mean, it's surreal. How did they get there?
Exactly. So tell us real quick. Don't take 90 pages, but just tell us really quick what happened to the city of Bangor. Here you had this big ship at a time when they were transporting new cars across Great Lakes, I guess, to car dealers from going from Detroit to places like Duluth and Minnesota and whatnot. What happened to the ship? Obviously, it ran into weather, for starters.
Right. It actually ran into weather twice. It was going up Lake Erie and got into a bad storm, but they were able to get through the locks and get into Lake Superior. And but it really got bad. So he headed off for harbor to Whitefish Bay. That, by the way, is where the Edmund Fitzgerald tried to make it. And he stayed there a day, and it kind of lessened the next day. And he thought, yeah, let's go on to Duluth. Mistake. Gets into a terrible storm off the Keweenaw Peninsula. And because the boat is redesigned to haul cars, not ore, it sits higher in the water. So consequently, the storm really raises Cain with it. And basically, they lose the rudder. It gets tossed onto this reef and a big gash, and basically there it sits, and it's trash.
And in the meantime, the weather is horrific, right? This is now, we're talking, what is it, November that this is happening in?
End of November 1926. And if you talk to anyone who sails the Great Lakes, the worst time to be on Lake Superior is November.
Right. And so the ship sat there on this reef, unable to budge, with 200 plus cars as cargo. And now the weather descends, well, it already descended. And so over a period of time, it gets encrusted with ice and snow. And meanwhile, you've got the crew freezing their butts off. What was the timetable for that? Did they all get off pretty quick, or
well,
were they
got off fairly quick because they were able to hack a lifeboat free and go to shore, and then back and forth with the boat until they got everybody on shore. So that was accomplished, but the big mistake, the captain thought that they were west, of Copper Harbor. The fact of the matter is they were east. And so when they finally get onshore, they think if we can get to Copper Harbor, so they start walking east, thinking they're west, right?
Right. So they walk 2 hours in the wrong direction,
In the
basically.
wrong
Right?
direction. So
Unbelievable. And so this is at this time, it's still, I guess, sub-zero. It's probably snowing. There's ice everywhere. And these guys, they basically have the clothes on their back, right? They've got their little Oxford shoes on. I mean, none of them were dressed for a blizzard, correct?
No, some of them are from Detroit, and this is going to be a cruise,
Right.
for the good times. So they literally came very close to freezing to death out there.
Sure. But the good news is that they were only actually trudging through this stuff for, I think it was 2 days, right?
Right. Ironically, another boat had crashed off the peninsula in an area where they were trying to go for harbor. And that boat wasn't as badly damaged. A couple of the guys from the crew got off, were able to find a phone and call the Coast Guard rescue crew in Eagle Harbor. So the crew goes out to rescue these guys. And they go right by the Bangor, don't even see it, the weather's so bad. On the return trip from rescuing them, they finally see the boat. So the captain goes in there, there's nobody around the boat. So he continues on. He gets a little bit further to the west, and here's the crew struggling along in the snow along a little harbor. He pulls in there and he tells them, light a fire, light a big fire. When I get this crew to Copper Harbor, I'll come back and get you guys. So he came back, got them to Copper Harbor. From there, we now have a town that has probably tripled in population because it has 50 rescued crewmen. So where do you put them? Well, right. The first trip, the crew from the one that was called in first, they ended up going back to the Coast Guard station in Eagle Harbor. The second crew, they were able to find a home, the Berg home in Copper Harbor. Mr. Berg, bless his heart, had just slaughtered a couple hogs, so they had plenty of pork, and he had a good cow, and they had chickens, so they got them in, fought them out.
So a lot of these guys, they basically, I'm guessing, collapsed in front of the fireplace,
exactly.
In absolute exhaustion and just kind of fell asleep, basically.
They did. And one of the sons tells a story. His job after getting them to the house was to then mop up the water that accumulated from the melting snow and ice.
More on Shipwrecked and Rescued with Larry Jorgensen in just a moment.
The Earth is dying a slow death. The 5,000 people living on the moon are in trouble. Their paradise has become a cautionary tale of human weakness. We need a hero. Enter Rick Mack and the Planetary Commission to save the Earth, the Moon, and themselves. Moon Rescue: Escape from the Dome by Tom Krantz. Now available in ebook, paperback, hardback, and audiobook.
Now, here's what I keep coming back to. You mentioned before, it was a while before they found a phone, right? So in 1926, or I guess by now it's 1927, somewhere right around there. There's no cell phones. There's no internet. There's no GPS. It's not like you can pop a phone out of your... Exactly. You have to find a phone, and it's 1927. So it's not like there's phones everywhere too, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. So they find the guys. The guys all survived, as I recall, correct? I think some of them had frostbite.
Some of them were in pretty bad shape, though.
Right. Because, 2 days in sub-zero weather with freezing conditions and no food and no water, blah, blah, blah. So let's put them aside for a minute. These guys are okay. Now you got a boat full of 200 plus Chryslers sitting on a reef covered with ice and snow. And the guy, Mr. Chrysler, who at the time was Chrysler, he wants them back.
Right. So he hires a salvage company out of Duluth. And he says, I'll pay you $140 a car if you can get them back to me in Detroit. So the first thing they do is they set up a guard shack to watch the boat. Okay. Now, the wreck happened in November. By January, the water around the reef had frozen enough that it would support a vehicle. So now's our chance. They build a ramp onto the boat, and one by one, they get the cars off of there. Was not an easy task because some of them didn't have batteries. So the ones that they got off the boat, when they got them finally to their destination of Copper Harbor, somebody had to take the batteries back to get the rest of them back to Copper Harbor.
So, and these cars actually functioned after all that? Obviously they did.
They did. Now there is a picture in the book of one car being brought out on a sleigh pulled by horses.
Right.
It got tumbled off the boat. When it hit the reef, it got tumbled into the shore, and it was, as one of the crewmen described, it looked like a ball of metal.
Oh, well. Well, I also saw, and so then I also read that they had to get fuel to these cars. So they brought up gasoline, essentially, in a specially equipped vehicle. I mean, this was before snow tires and everything. And I saw a picture of that one vehicle that you talked about. It had the chains on the back and skis on the front.
Yeah, that vehicle was not used to haul the fuel.
No, go ahead.
That vehicle rescued. Well, first of all, it took the insurance man up there to declare the ship a loss. Okay, but it also rescued the guys that were at the Berg House that were really in bad shape. It rescued them, got them to the hospital in Lorium, about 40 miles away. The rest of the ones were taken there by horse and sleigh. But that vehicle, and it was pretty experimental in those days, made the trip several times from Calumet to Copper Harbor, 40 miles one way through snow, and did a tremendous job in saving lives and equipment.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, the whole project itself, when you think of the manpower that must have gone into, once they found everybody and once they found the cars, building whatever this structure was to get the cars off, which I guess was a combination of timber and ice, really, right? Because that's what was there. Right. And then getting them off and then, moving the batteries around and filling them with gas. Geez, I'm wrapping my brain around how that happened. So they get the cars and eventually they get the cars to Calumet. Is that where they ended up?
Well, they get them to Copper Harbor first.
Okay, that's right.
They drive along the Lake Superior shore, which is strong enough now to support them. So they get 200 and some Chryslers in Copper Harbor. It's just unbelievable. Well, the road from Copper Harbor to Calumet, which isn't much of a road to start with, and in the wintertime, they don't even plow it. Now, you're talking about an area that this past winter got over 300 inches of snow. Okay, so there's two counties involved on that peninsula. They get the road crews from both counties involved in trying to clear the road. It takes them 3 weeks, and they bring in a special new turbine type snowplow from Minnesota to help them. They get the road open. Now we got to get the cars from Copper Harbor to Calumet. So the word is, if you want to drive one, we'll give you $5 okay, per car.
So they hired these random people just to drive the cars, basically.
Just to drive the cars. And there were a lot of schoolboys who missed school that day. Okay?
That's funny. So eventually, we had 200 and how many? 220 some cars, right? What happened to the cars?
Okay, the cars were all supposed to get to Calumet and be loaded on a train to go back to Detroit. Some of them, strangely enough, didn't make it. We're not sure how many. We've tracked down at least a couple, but they kind of disappeared for a while. And the one in particular that we tracked down sits in a museum today up in Eagle Harbor, about 5 miles from the wreck scene. That car has over 200,000 miles on it, and there is an axe mark on it where the ice was chopped away to get it off of the boat. So we tracked the history of that car. 200,000 miles. Who owned it? How did it get to where it's at now? The car is an amazing thing. Besides the Chryslers, there were 6 whippets on that boat. And, I took the liberty of saying none of them went back to Detroit because, let's face it, Chrysler's paying for the rescue. We found 2 of them. We have a picture in the book of one of them. And we talked to a lady who has been in the peninsula forever. And she admitted that when she was young, she bought one at an estate auction. So we definitely tracked down 2 of the whippets. Who knows what happened to the other 4?
So a Whippet was a brand of car that was it had on the hood ornament was actually a Whippet, which is a dog.
Right.
It's kind of a cross between a greyhound and it's a very slim dog, and it was actually kind of a cool hood ornament. But that company didn't last very long, I think, right?
Well, not in making cars, it didn't. The Willis Company, which went on to make Jeeps, more money selling cars, to the government, and they at that time they were based out of Toledo. How the 6 cars got from Toledo to the boat in Detroit, I'm not sure. We couldn't find that story, but they were on there.
Well, of those 220 some cars, we know for sure where one is, and we know where another one, where one of the Whippets was. But do we think the other 200 cars are secretly in people's garages someplace? Or
no, most of them did go back.
Okay.
I did talk to a gentleman who is the great nephew of the man who was the Chrysler dealer in Calumet at that time. And he says, they all went back. Well, we know they didn't all go back, but most of them did. There were, 5, 6. Since the book has come out, I have people that contact me and say, well, my grandfather or my uncle was a kid in those days, and he drove one of those cars. And he told me they didn't all go back.
I bet. That's pretty funny. So where can we buy Shipwrecked and Rescued by Larry Jorgensen? Where can we buy this book, Larry?
Well, the best place, of course, would be my website, which is shipwreckedandrescued.com. And I'll even sign it to you if you want. It's
a beautiful website, folks. Shipwreckedandrescued.com. All the words are exactly the way they sound. The site's beautiful. You can purchase the book there. It's not on Amazon, correct?
Not yet, but it will be.
Eventually, yeah. I found it on your website, but you graciously gifted me a copy of it, and I'm so glad you did. You got anything else in the hopper, or are you just going to worry about selling this one for a while?
Well, I've got a couple ideas that have been triggered by being up here in the North Country, and you get addicted to a story and you hang on to it. But right now, I'm enjoying meeting people who are truly fascinated by the story, and it's not just shipwreck people or Great Lakes people. If you notice on the back cover, there's a review from a gentleman who is an antique car collector.
Sure.
They also are fascinated by an antique car that still exists with 200,000 miles that was rescued.
Oh, yeah. There's car clubs all over. I'm in New Jersey. There's a million car clubs here, and they love this stuff. So, it's, as you said, it's not just for Michigan people and for shipwreck fans. It's for a much huger audience. Larry, I once again really appreciate you being with me. I hope that the weather stays nice for the rest of your time up in Wisconsin. And then you're headed back to Louisiana. That's where you live right now, right?
Yeah, the food's better now.
Yeah, exactly. Larry Jorgensen, once again, thanks for being with me, and good luck with the book.
It's time to grab your beach reading. Your great escape is waiting at TomCranceBooks.com. Contemporary fiction in the Bud and Maggie series, sci-fi adventure in the Earth Moon Rescue series. Visit TomCranceBooks.com for detailed descriptions and links to the ebook, paperback, hardback, and audiobook editions. That's TomCranceBooks.com. You deserve a great escape.